All right, let's start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. All right. The name of this one is Music as a Means of Communication. And pretty much this is, just something I've been meditating on. I heard this song that came out back in 1983 by a group called CD3. That's C as in cat, D as in dog, and 3 as in, three capital I's, or you could put a number 3. And that was the name of the group. Now, they had a song called Get Tough. And pretty much, it was a message of, Jake pretty much catching hell and, signs of the time and the destruction that was coming, and, how they had, nuclear technology and all this stuff. And pretty much it was used as a means of communication. That's how Jake would communicate with each other. And then every time Jake, for instance, when you would, during the time of slavery, Jake would make up their own language to be able to speak right in front of the devil, and they wouldn't know what Jake was talking about. So the music was also a way of communication, and the same way it could be used to convey positive messages, it could also be used to convey negative messages, and the same way that these messages were distributed to the individuals is the same way that the Lord is using his, song, which is the scriptures, which is his truth, as a means of communication. Now, I looked up the word music because I did this years ago. I did a lesson on this years ago on the word music, that it comes from the word muse, that goes back to the 9 daughters of Zeus and their mother Mnemosyne. And pretty much, the ancient poets would pretty much pray to these muses to be able to get, ideas, messages, inspiration, so on and so forth, and they're doing the same thing today, no different. So it says mid-13th century musique, a pleasing succession of sounds or combination of sounds, the science of combining sounds in rhythmic, melodic, and later harmonic order, from Old French musique and directly from Latin musica, the art of music, also including poetry, also a source of Spanish musica, Italian musica, Old High German musica, German music, like they had this group, I forgot the name of the group. They were a German group, and they had music nonstop. I forgot the name of the group. It says Dutch music, Danish music, from Greek musike, techne, art of the muses. See, so when you go back to the Greek, it goes back to the art of the muses, and the muses were 9, daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, where the inspiration for music came from. All right, on the left-hand side, of course, from feminine of musikos, pertaining to the muses, musical, educated, from musa, muse. See, muse. Now, when we go to muse, right, it says late 14th century, one of the 9 muses of classical mythology, daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, protectors of the arts, from Old French muse, and directly from Latin musa, from Greek musa, the muse, also music, song, ultimately from pi root men, to think, right? Because when you muse upon something, you're thinking about it, and that's why music is such a effective weapon, because it causes you to reflect and think about certain things. So it could either be a positive message or it could be a negative message. All right, meaning inspiring goddess of a particular poet with a lowercase m is from the late 14th century. All right, and pretty much that's what music does. It causes you to go into like a particular mind state or mind frame. All right. Well, you get the word also amusement. Let's look up the word amusement, which pretty much when you look at the word amusement, it means to muse the mind. Diversion of attention. See? So music could be used as a diversion from attention, but it could also be used as a source of getting you, um, on track, keeping you, focused. Like, some people that do studies, serious studies, they might throw on some classical music because classical music helps to make them calm, bring them to a calmer state, and helps them to relax and focus their attention on the work that they're doing. While other music can tend to distract you from the goals that you have to accomplish. Okay? So it says from French, amusement, noun of action from amuser to amuse. All right? See? Meaning a pastime, play, game, anything which pleasantly diverts the attention. And this is what's wrong with Jake. They have a short attention span, because their mindset is more on having fun than studying really, and Jake in general, that's just our spirit, and that's why it's a battle, because Jake has that spirit of royalty. Royalty doesn't work. Royalty just has fun, a good time. But in these times, in this situation, we have to be focused. We have to be circumspect. We have to look to what's going on in the world to report it, because these things are ushering in the end of the world. Okay? So it says divert the attention. All right, so when you muse upon something, you're pretty much, your attention is being taken away from a more pressing matter. This is why when we go to the parable of the sower seed, you had, matter of fact, let's get there real quick. I had another precept I want to start off with, but let's go to it. Let's go to Matthew 13. And it's the very first one, the seed that fell by the wayside. Matthew 13 and 18. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which received seed by the wayside. So this individual, something came in there to divert his attention from the melody that was being played. He heard it, didn't really understand it, and then some type of diversion came in and pulled him away so that he wouldn't be able to receive this truth. Okay? So now let's go real quick to 1 Corinthians 13 and 1. It says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Yeah, just making noise. Because you could take musical instruments, that you can play and make it sound beautiful. Or you could play something and it sounds horrible because you don't know how to play. And when we hear these so-called Christians and these other Israelite groups that are going off on the doctrine, it's like a very bad song that you're like, come on, get it right. That's not how you play it. That's not how that's not the melody. Those are not the lyrics. These are the lyrics. See? So now let's go from there to 1 Corinthians 14, just to give you a sense of how, these words that come out of these scriptures are also a song. And they could either capture your attention and draw you in, or they can push you away. 1 Corinthians 14 and 6. Now, brethren, if I come unto you speaking with tongues What shall I profit you, except I shall speak to you either by revelation, or by knowledge, or by prophesying, or by doctrine, right? Because you just can't say stuff and just not explain it or break it down. That's what the word prophecy means, you know? In the case of prophecy, it's, to say before, prophesying is when you're breaking down what, and explaining what these prophecies are. All right. It says, and even things without life-giving sound, whether pipe or harp, right, which are musical instruments, except they give a distinction in the sounds, how shall it be known what is piped or harped, right? So how are you going to know what's being played if there's not a distinction? Because you have a distinction between a solemn song, a sad song, a dirge, and something that's more up tempo and happy, and something to make you feel good. Then you have a difference between music that gets you hyped up to work out and other music that gets you wound down to be able to just relax and chill. Just like smooth jazz or something like that, So it says, if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle? And that's what this whole society and the system is about. It's pretty much is about the elect against the world. And the elect are going to be the only ones that are going to be able to hear the melody and the lyrics to the song of Yahweh Bashem Shai and follow along and dance with it. Others will not. Let's go real quick to Matthew 11. So this is a great symphony that's being played. The prophets would go out with music. It was a part of our culture. You see? Matthew 11 and 16. But whereunto shall I liken this generation? Meaning the generation that's here today, that was back there with Yahweh Shai and the disciples before they became apostles. It is like unto children sitting in the markets, like when you go to the agora, to these different openings, where business is conducted, and calling unto their fellows, right? And this is the prophets calling unto the other Israelites out there, letting them know or giving them the message or the songs, the song of the Lord, right? And saying, we have piped unto you, we're playing our heart out over here. And you have not danced, right? You ain't dancing to the melody of the tune of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. We have mourned unto you, and you have not lamented. So you pretty much are not, moving to the melody of this song. You're moving to the melody of the song of the world. That's why in 1 John, I believe it's the 4th chapter, says they are of the world, therefore they speak of the world, and the world heareth them. Because they cannot speak of the truth, because the truth, when you speak the truth separates you from the world. It separates you from loved ones. It separates you from, anything that goes contrary to the word. And you brothers that's been in this thing for a while, and some of you sisters, you've noticed over the years how you've had relationships with, family members or friends, and that relationship strayed. They got away from you because they looked at you as being bugged out because they couldn't hear the melody of the song that you heard. And they couldn't receive the benefit of this music. All right? So going back to 1 Corinthians 14 and 8, for if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle? So who's going to get ready? So likewise, you, except you utter by the tongue words easy to be understood, how shall it be known what is spoken? For you shall speak into the air. And that's why the scriptures speak about make it plain upon tables. When we speak this word, we just speak it plain. We just tell them what it is. And the thing about it is that you're going to have the majority of Israelites out there. Forget about the nations. We're just talking about Israel. You're going to have the majority of Israelites out there that's not going to take heed to this word. You have to remember one thing. They are blinded. It was set up that way on purpose. The Lord blinded them on purpose because he does not want them to get this message, because they are not the vessels that were created and chosen in the beginning to receive this knowledge to be able to be delivered in these times. Everything has been predestined, predetermined. And this is what some of these Israelite camps out here don't get. They're trying to wake up every Israelite. You're not going to wake up every Israelite. This is what the heavy lifting of the internet is all about, as Elder Apostle Gabar always calls it. The internet does our heavy lifting, because the Lord said that this message will go out through the four corners of the earth, and it's impossible. Yahweh Shai even said it, that you're not going to go to all the different cities where the Israelites are at till the Lord comes back. So how is this message going to reach the ones that the Lord wanted to reach? By the internet. This is why he gave Esau the technology of the Urim and the Thummim, the lights and perfection, so that this message could be broadcasted out there. They did it for their secretive, missions, and to be able to get, information quicker around the world. But guess what? It was really given to them for the benefit of the Lord's word going out in what we're doing right now with these different lessons. All right, now, what did I have? That was it on that. Okay. Now, before I get into any more of these precepts, what I did was here, can music destroy a community? Because as I was mentioning to you before, the group CD3, right? They did a song back in 1983 called Get Tough. In that song, they spoke about a lot of the technology and the, atomic bombs and nuclear, and the end of the world, so on and so forth. And these were messages, positive messages that were, being broadcasted through the music today known as hip hop or rap, and pretty much, the messages at the beginning were positive, talking about struggles in the ghetto, talking about hardships and poverty, unemployment, but at the end of the day, always encouraging each other, to keep a positive mindset. But then in the late 80s into the early 90s, that's when it started to change, because there was a particular group of Edomites that were owners of these private, prisons, that wanted to fill the prisons, because the more bodies they had in the prison, the more money they make off of the U.S. tax dollars, And there have been meetings about this, but the thing about it, it's not recorded. There's nothing there tangible. So when you try to dig in, you're not going to get any information on it except for the people that were actually there that spoke out about it, like the dude from Bone Thugs and Harmony. He was one of the very few that I've heard speaking about that, So it says, music by itself rarely destroys a community, but it can contribute to social tension or divisions. In certain contexts, especially when it reflects or amplifies violent or hateful ideologies, music with lyrics promoting racism, misogyny, or extreme nationalism can inflame visions, or reinforce harmful stereotypes, cultural disrespect and appropriation. When one group uses another's cultural music without understanding, gang affiliation or crime glorification. And this is what it was used for. The positive message in hip hop was used as a glorification of gang affiliation, slut, lifestyles, crime, going in and out of jail, which Jake is big on that. You're not a real one unless you've been locked up in the joint. And that's the mentality of most, until clowns that are faking the funk get up in there and find out the hard way that it's not all what it's cracked up to be. It says in some communities, certain music genres, e.g. drill or gangster rap, have been linked with glorifying violence, which critics argue may escalate local tensions. Generational or moral clashes, music that's seen as too rebellious, explicit, or countercultural can spark generational divides or moral panic, e.g., rock in the 1950s, punk in the 1970s, or hip hop in the 1990s. However, these effects usually reflect underlying societal issues, right? Which these devils use the music to exploit that. Because, yes, does crime happen in the ghetto, in the barrios, in the hoods, and all that? Of course. But when you glorify it and you make it seem like the norm, people are gonna bite down on it. They're gonna, lean towards it. Especially, if it gets them women, these simple-minded jakes I get on women, get them recognition and fame, they'll do anything to get in the spotlight. Music becomes a symbol or battleground rather than a root cause. It's often a mirror of community dynamics, not a sledgehammer that breaks them apart. And it does break them apart because of the negative, stereotype, I guess, for lack of words, that comes with it. So it says, why did hip hop go from positive messages to negative and violent messages? Hip hop shift from mostly positive, conscious messages to more negative or violent themes is a complex evolution driven by a mix of cultural, economic, and industry factors. So you got to learn how to read between the lines. Here's a breakdown of the key reasons. Reflecting harsh realities. Early hip hop in the 1970s and 80s, like Grandmaster Flash's The Message, already talked about poverty, racism, and street life. As the crack epidemic, mass incarceration, and gang violence hit communities in the 1980s and 1990s, hip-hop artists began documenting the raw truth of inner-city life, which often meant violence and crime. Hip-hop didn't turn violent, America did, a common perspective among cultural critics. Rise of gangster rap, late 80s and 90s. I remember it like it was yesterday. Groups like NWA, Tupac, and Biggie ushered in gangster rap, which brought hard-hitting street narratives to the mainstream. These artists were often expressing anger at systemic oppression, e.g. police brutality, but also glorifying or commercializing violence, drugs, and misogyny. This style became hugely profitable, which leads to commercial pressures. And this was the whole thing from the beginning anyway, because these record companies were influenced by the prison complex, but there's no documentation on it. I'll say allegedly. There's no documentation on it, but there have been individuals that's been there. And why did they choose the music? Because they know that music is a way to convey messages, whether it be positive messages or negative messages. And that's why the hip hop of today mostly pushes out negative messages. Major record labels noticed that controversial, edgy content sold better than conscious rap. As a result, positive or politically conscious rappers were pushed aside. Violent or hyper-masculine personas were amplified and promoted. It says, artists often felt pressure to fit a certain image to succeed. Yeah. Like Master Ace, he wrote about it in a song where, his songs weren't, talking about sluts enough. He wasn't, talking about using drugs enough. He wasn't talking about, shooting and killing enough, It says, I'm going to skip that one. It says loss of community control. Hip hop started as a community-driven art form, but corporate control changed its direction when big business took over. Ownership shifted away from artists and communities. Narratives became less diverse, often reinforcing harmful stereotypes. Today, it's more nuanced than it seems. While mainstream hip-hop may still skew towards materialism and aggression, there's a huge underground. Yeah, there are, but it's underground. So right here, I put it, did private prisons owners have any influence on gangster rap? So just bear with me. I'm just using this narrative to paint a picture. The idea that private prison owners intentionally influence gangster rap to encourage incarceration is a popular theory, but there's no concrete evidence to prove it happened in the way it's often described, right? Because there was no documentation, just eyewitness accounts. The viral conspiracy theory, one version of the theory comes from the 1990s secret meeting story that circulated online, often called the secret meeting that changed rap music. It claims record execs met with private prison investors. They agreed to push gangster rap to glorify crime. The goal increased incarceration to profit from filling private prisons. And then you could do the math. Look at when these private prisons were created, and look, you know, when gangster rap was really pushed heavy out there, and look at how in that time period these private prisons, had a very lucrative uh, um, time. I put it like that. This story has never been verified, and the original source is anonymous and untraceable. It reads more like a cautionary tale than a factual account. What is real? While there's no proof of a secret conspiracy, some real dynamics fuel this belief. Hip hop and mass incarceration grew in parallel, meaning they grew side by side. The rise of gangster rap in the late 1980s coincided with the war on drugs and the explosion of the prison industrial complex. Black communities were heavily targeted by harsh laws, e.g., crack versus cocaine sentencing, which hip hop documented. Private prisons do profit from incarceration. Companies like Corv Civic and GEO Group benefit from keeping prisons full. This system does incentivize laws and policies that criminalize poor communities, but there's no public record of them investing in record labels or promoting gangster rap directly. Yeah, because they're not going to be that stupid to have a record of that. The music industry did commercialize violent imagery. Labels prioritize artists who reinforce stereotypes about black men, violent, hypersexual, criminal. Whether intentional or not, it was intentional. This aligned with the narratives that also justify over policing and mass incarceration. So they're saying that it was no direct evidence, no proof, but indirectly, what they say, follow the money trail. And when you follow the money trail, you'll get a better picture of it. Now, the reason for all of this was pretty much to show you how music can have an influence in the way Jake thinks. Just like it could be negative or it could be positive. Now, here in the scriptures, right, we're going to read just a couple of scriptures dealing with music and musical instruments and things of that nature. And Lord's will, the lesson will be edifying. This is 2 Chronicles 7 and 6. And the priests waited on their offices, the Levites also, with instruments of music of the Lord, which David the king had made to praise Yahweh by Shem Shai, because his mercy endureth forever. When David praised by their ministry, and their priests sounded trumpets before them, and all Israel stood. So this was, a way of bringing Jake together. Remember, you had trumpets. Trumpets were blown to gather the congregation, to sound an alarm of war, or for festivities, ceremonies, so on and so forth. Now let's look up this word music, because you have different words for the word music, but in this case, this music here is the word shayar, which means song. Okay, song, lyrics, song, religious song, song of Levitical choir, song ode. So pretty much it's a song. So music is a song. It conveys messages, whether positive or negative. Now let's go from there. Like I said, we're just gonna hit a few dealing with music. Daniel 6:18. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Now this is an important one too. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. Now this was, I believe, this was Darius, King Darius. Yep, this was King Darius, and he couldn't sleep this particular night. So, right. So he pretty much went to bed sleeping. Fasting. No music was being played, and he went and he laid down, but his sleep went from him. You know how like you sitting in the bed and you might be tired as hell, but your brain is racing. Your brain won't turn off. You can't go to sleep. Well, this is what happened to him. He had insomnia at this point. Now, what I want to do here is I want to show you something, right? Because we're going to go back to the word muse or music. The word here for music is Dachawa. Dachawa, right? It says diversions, see? Musical instruments, dancing girls, concubines, music. So this particular music is a diversion. That's why when the king went to bed, he was fasting. He was in a serious, somber mind state, and he didn't want the music to divert his mind from where he was at, where he was thinking, what he was meditating on. Because music has a way of diverting the attention, right? In Spanish, you have the word divertir. Divertir is to divert. When you're entertained, your attention is not focused on serious-minded issues. It's focused on folly. And folly, every once in a while, you need to, let your hair down every once in a while. But at the same time, you can't get caught up too much into that superfluity, because that also can make you weak. Like Tony Montana said, the booze and the concha made him soft. Too much of a good time, too much comfort, too much, sex, pretty much all of that, too much drinking, too much anything can weaken you, and make you soft. That's why it says, that good times make soft men, but hard times make hard men. You see? So it says muse, one of the 9 muses, and this is the root word of music. Daughters of Zeus, Mnemosyne, protector of the arts, right? Just want to get to the point. It's here to think, meaning inspiring goddess of a particular poet. So to think, meaning when you muse upon something, you're a muse, or your mind is focused on that one thing. That's why the Apostle John got cursed out by the angel, because it said he looked at the woman with great amazement. He was just like taken by her, because America, when it was first set up and established, it was set up like a beautiful woman that would attract and allure you, and let your guards down. And you were just caught in that spell, in that web, in that enchantment. You see? All right, so let's go from there to, so the word there is diversion, the wach or dachawa. That was with the King Darius. All right, now let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Just bear with me. This thing every once in a while acts stupid. Ecclesiastes 12:4. And the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Yeah, because the daughters of music is talking about the music industry, but also these false religions, because they're a form of music. All right. Let's go real quick to, what is that, Revelation 15? Or is that Revelation 14? Let me try 14 first. All right, let me just check. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so let's go back. Revelation 14. I started 1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, which is Yahushai. Mount Zion represents Israel, but it really begins with the governing body, the 144,000. And with him, 144,000 having his father's name written in their foreheads. And when you go to the different translations and to the different languages, it says his name and his father's name. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne. Right, and we're singing the new song right now, which the world cannot hear. To the world, we've been piping to these jakes out here, and they are not, moving to the melody. They can't hear the song. To them, it's just like noise. It says, and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. All right. Now let's go from there to Revelation 15 and 2. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. This is the Apostle John in the chariot of Yahushua, looking down on America, the lake of fire, looking through the ozone layer all the way down to where the area or the location of America is fully engulfed in flames. And them that had gotten the victory over the beast, which are the elect of the nation of Israel, and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of the Most High. Right, because the prophets are the ones that have the harps of the Most High. They're the ones out here on the streets, singing this song, giving you the lyrics to the song, of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, the song that leads to salvation. That's why the Apostle Paul said that it pleased the Most High by the foolishness of preaching to save them which believe. So in essence, we're out here singing a song, but there's a whole lot of other different songs that are being sung out here that are not the right tune or the right frequency. And it's getting a lot of people caught up. But the elect of the Lord are not going to be caught up in that, because the scripture said that my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. A stranger will they not follow. So they're hearing the melody of all of these different songs out there, but it's crap. But to the unsuspecting, those are beautiful songs. And this song here is a disturbing to them. Why? Because they're not a part of this. Even the spirit of truth whom the world cannot receive, because it knoweth him not, neither seeth him. Right? So it says, and they sing the song of Moses, the servant of the Most High, which goes back to Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter. And for a long time, I honestly thought that this was talking about Deuteronomy 15, the Lord is a man of war, the Lord is... I thought this was the song of Moses, but it's not. It's Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter. That's the song of Moses. And pretty much that's what we're singing. We're singing deliverance. The Lord is about to come back, destroy this present evil world, deliver us, and bring us back to the kingdom. Bottom line. It says, and they sing the song of Moses, the servant of the Most High, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, Lord power almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. Yeah, and there's only one way. And not everyone's going to get this, because it says that very few there be that go in thereat. So not everyone is going to be able to accept the music of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. All right. Now let's go from there to Ecclesiastes 12 and 4. Read that again. And the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Right, that's dealing with the music industry, but you also got these false philosophies out here, these false religions that are going to be brought low. Is this music here? Is this the word shayar? Yep, the word shayar, which basically means a song. Right, now check it out. See, song, lyric song, religious song. So it's talking about the song of it's talking about the song, these demonic songs out here that they got in the world, and also these different religious songs, these different religious breakdowns, like Christianity, Islam, so on and so forth. And they're all going to be brought down. Song of Levitical choirs. All right. What else we got? What's this here? Isaiah 14 and 11. Yeah, this is another good one. It says, thy pomp, matter of fact. Well, yeah, I'm not going to. Yeah. All right, so let's go Isaiah 14 and 11. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials. The worm is spread under thee, the worms cover thee. So the noise of your vials, your music, your lousy music, your lousy religious crap that you put out there, all of that is going to be stomped out when Yahweh Shai comes back. Because all knees are going to bow to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Every last one of them. Revelation 18 and 21. And I took up a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down and shall be found no more at all. Right? Because Babylon, this great city, is talking about America, Babylon the Great, and it will not be found anymore. It says, and the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. So all of these lousy songs, this lousy music, whether it's secular or religious, it's all going to be done away with. The only song that's going to prevail in that day is the song of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, the song of Moses. This new song that's being sung out here, of the message of the salvation and deliverance of the elect of the nation of Israel, and eventually the rest of the Israelites will come through them. So music can be used to convey messages, but it could also be used to send out negative thoughts, and in the case of Esau, everything that Esau does, he uses everything to destroy people. He's not a builder, he's not a healer, he's a destroyer, he's a poisoner. This is what he was created for. Remember, it said that there were two manner of children. Even today, Jake, still have compassion, even if it's for another nation, they still have that compassionate spirit, because that's just in our nature. Esau doesn't have that. It says that the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Well, God damn, if his tender mercies are cruel, just imagine the regular cruelty. All right. So, I just, thought that would make a good lesson. Hopefully it was, edifying to you brothers and few sisters out there. To the next time I say shalom.